Sanibonani ngiyanibingelela nonke endaweni zonke la nikhona ngokuhlukahlukana okhulumayo uAndile wakwambatha owaziwa ngelika Andy Mthiya ishinga lamashingo last man standing ugandaganda omnyama ngumfundisi ngagcotshwa ngenziwa umfundisi as a senior pastor. I love God, I love Africa, I love my people. Kungifikela nje today ukuthi can we just look at God in Africa, and there are certain things that triggered the thought. I will simply say usually I hear umama bomthandazo uma bekhuluma noma beshumayezana ngama Thursdays, and I'm not saying that is wrong, but I always hear them saying sakhishwa eGibhithe ezweni lobugqila, uNkulunkulu wasikhipha eGibhithe wasibeka ezweni elikhululekile. And now that thing made me ukuthi ngihlale phansi and think about God in Africa, and I realized ukuthi number one, we need to look at this narrative ethi Gibhithe izwe lobugqila. Number one, we need to check ukuthi where is iGibhithe. That is point number one. iGibhithe is situated here in Africa. The original Egyptians were black people. From Jebeqala were black people. And let us look at this philosophy or at this narrative at Egypt is a world of slavery. I'm looking at Egypt and mangilandela the history. I know it's after slavery sesiqalile eGibhithe, but mangilandela le history and the history ka Joseph, because that's where we start following Egypt as izwe lobugqila. From the time Joseph ethathwa eyongena eEgypt. Now, Joseph number one akazange athathwe ngendluzulu. Joseph wathengwa from kubafowabo, from kuma Ishmaelites. He was bought by abantu base Egypt. Uma bebathe bemthenga babengamthengelanga ukuthi ayobusa eGibhithe, but babemthengela into eyi-one eyokuthi fanele ahambe ayoba isisebenzi eGibhithe. Now uma yoba isisebenzi eGibhithe sekungaba ukuthi ke ngokwesikhathi sangaleso sikhathi leso i-era yangaleso sikhathi leso abantu ababesebenza babetreatwa kanjani. But you can imagine nawe la uhlala khona emzini wakho uma unomuntu like kunabo auntie, kunabo afowethu abasenzela ingadi and all those people ngokwalesa sikhathi they were treated ngokwalesa sikhathi as ama-slaves, and kade benganama options, bekunganamthetho obavumelayo ukuthi baphathwe ngendlela ethize. And it's not only eGibhithe lapho bekhona abantu abanjalo, but everywhere in the entire world that thing was happening. I can even quote nase in New York, those things were happening ezokuthi kube khona abantu abama-slaveries, you know, abasebenza lapho. But I want us to look at God in Africa, because colonizers, they came and they made us believe that they are superior than us as Africans, and they gave us the mindset yokuthi Egypt yizwe eli evil, and Egypt yizwe lokungcola, yizwe lokubulala, oppress abantu and all that. They made us believe in that, and they made us believe ekutheni uNkulunkulu only came Egypt ezokhipha abantu bama-Israelites or ezokhulula abantwana bakhe noma isizwe sakhe esithize, enza leso sizwe leso sibe isizwe sikhululekile from Egyptians. Let's look at God. Looking at God in Africa. Why would one day God decide ukuthi Joseph uzoba umuntu obusayo, but angeke ubuse kulezwe okulo, but Joseph uzobusa eGibhithe, in Egypt, in Africa? It's because God knew ukuthi eAfrica, eEgypt kunamandla angakanani wabekile kubantu abamnyama. Indlu yomuntu omnyama uNkulunkulu wayibusisa ukudlula indlu yomuntu owumlungu. Now, uNkulunkulu goes to Joseph and says, Joseph, bazokukhothamela bonke abantu. Joseph, you will be the biggest person. But before Joseph abe the biggest person, he had to go through Egypt where ubukhosi bakhona bebubukhulu ukudlula ubukhosi bonke ongabucabanga emhlabeni. Ubukhosi base-Egypt babubukhulu ukudlula bonke ubukhosi ongabucabanga emhlabeni. So uJoseph uyoqala khona. Make yofika e-Egypt uNkulunkulu umenza ahlaziye iphupho likaFaro. And then make menza ahlaziye iphupho likaFaro, uNkulunkulu ususe uJoseph ezweni lakubo through ama-dreams. He's traveling. Ufika e-Egypt. Uyaboshwa, make eboshwa ungena ejele. Make fika ejele u-interpreter a dream yalabantu abayi-2. After interpreting labantu, omunye uyabulawa, omunye uyaphuma. Make phuma lo omunye, uFaro uba ne-dream. uFaro interprets the dream again. I mean, Joseph interprets the dream again. When Joseph interprets the dream again, uyakhishwa, he becomes the king that God had said you will be. No matter not prime minister of some sort or whatsoever, but he becomes powerful. He becomes a person on authority in Egypt. Now, this is what God does. uNkulunkulu ulambisa umhlaba wonke, hayi izwe lonke. Ulambisa umhlaba wonke. And then ube kukuhle Africa. Umhlaba wonke at some point wazokhothamela umuntu omnyama, wazocela ukudla emntwini omnyama. Umhlaba wonke. EGibhithe leli thina esithi izwe lobugqili, uNkulunkulu wabeka ukudla wahlalisa khona. Bonke abantu they came to lelizwe elase-Africa because uNkulunkulu decided ukuthi uzobeka ukudla e-Africa, ezweni lomuntu omnyama. Zonke izizwe zeza zazocela ukudla ezweni lomuntu omnyama. You just need to love yourself, umuntu omnyama. You just need to understand the power that you possess. How much God loved you. Let's move away kancane from Joseph. Now let's think of Moses. Do you really think ukuthi uFaro was a fool? Ukuthi umntanakhe can come to uFaro athi baba ngithole umntwana ebengimkhulelwe. But bayambheka uMoses bathola ukuthi uMoses uwumlungu. Kodwa umntana ukaFaro uwumuntu omnyama. Is it possible ukuthi kungathi umntanami but bayambheka bambona ukuthi uneyinwele ezi-straight umhlophe namehlo akhe awafani namehlo bese kuthiwa umntanami loyo? So now that thing should teach us ukuthi what color was Moses. And uMoses aze asuke kulezo asuka kulo azohlaliswa e-Africa, e-Egypt. uMoses make fika e-Egypt, number 1, ufundiswa abobani, ufundiswa abantu base-Egypt, Africans. Udla ukudla kwakuphi kwase-Egypt, Africans. Ugqoka ukugqoka kwase-Egypt, which is African. So when you follow history of Moses, you get to know ukuthi Moses was one of the most intelligent guys. Uyithathe phi imfundo in Africa, uyi-product yethu thina ama-Africans. Wafika uMoses engazi lutho, umntwana ongazi lutho, wafika e-Africa, wafundiswa, wakhula, wakhulela e-Africa. Every little thing that Moses knew was e-Africa. If Moses was a person preacher, he would preach according to the teachings zase-Africa. Mntu omnyama, stop having self-hate. You are the most powerful person on earth. God loved you so much. So Tina, we have a self-hate. Maybe let me shock people. The Bible teaches us that after certain days, Jesus was taken. After certain days, mark that. After certain days, Jesus was taken to Egypt, while yokulela Egypt, till the age of 12 years. Here's the question. What language Jesus was he speaking? They say it's Aramaic. And then you need to ask yourself, what language Egyptians were they speaking? uJesu, the first thing that he saw ngamehlo akhe senyameni, angikhulumi ngoJesu kumoya, ngikhuluma ngoJesu enyameni. The first thing that he saw ngamehlo akhe enyama was Africa. 2, the first thing that he ate came from the soil of Africa. Mayiqale nama taste buds, ama taste buds akhe esesebenza, waqala ukutesta into yase-Afrika. Impahla uJesu mayiqala ukubona imibala and everything, he saw Africans. Uma eqala ukukhuluma noma eqala ukuzwa nento emake sense kuye emadlebeni akhe kukhulunywa naye enyameni, wezwa ini? Is Africa. Why Jesu uyokhulela eAfrica? It's because uNkulunkulu ubekile izinto zakhe eAfrica kubantu abamnyama. Angafuni ukungena ekuthenini ngereveal through the scriptures ukuthi uJesu uthi umuntu oneskin esinjani yena. Angafuni ukureveal ukuthi uMoses iskin color sakhe sasinjani. But I'm just talking nje about izinto ezifuna senze logic ngazo ukuthi us as Africans, we should not look down upon ourselves. We should stop having self-hate and looking at abelungu sibabona ngathi ama-subordinate, thina sama-subordinates abo and bona they are superior than us. God loved you, umuntu omnyama. I went as far as looking at umhlabathi. Ngubhekile umhlabathi and angizange ngihlangane nomhlabathi omhlophe. But the Bible teaches us ukuthi makwenziwa umuntu kwahlanganiswa amanzi nomhlabathi. Now noma ngabe ngathi ke isand imhlophe, but mayihlangana namanzi buyaphela ubumhlophe. Isand iba brown. Unjani uAdam? What color was Adam? Wadalelwa phi umuntu? Umuntu oqala iEden yayikuphi? Umhlabathi obizwa ngokuthi iAdama, which is the same soil that yasetshenziswa to make uAdam. Makuthiwa umuntu wabunjwa ngomhlabathi, kwakusetshenziswa umhlabathi obizwa ngokuthi iAdama. What color was umhlabathi obizwa ngokuthi iAdama? God and Africa. God loved Africans so much. Angakhulumi ngabo Ham, angakhulumi ngabo Kush, and angakhulumi about ama-Israelites who were black people, angakhulumi about ama-Jews who were black people. I'm just talking about uNkulunkulu eyiveze se-Africa. We are the most powerful nation ever. We are the most powerful nation ever. I want to talk about something maybe a bit controversial. The concept eyeyibhebhe zamatshe ezathathwa zafakwa kumphongolo wesivumelwano. That is a concept yase-Egypt. When you go to Egypt, even today, kunama ancient stones asabhaliwe namanje imilando yaseGibhithe. It's ancient stones nanamhlanje asabhaliwe imilando yaseGibhithe, and ibhebhe zamatshe kubhalwe ematsheni. The very same thing that happened a long time ago. Let's remember this. uMoses wakhulela eGibhithe. So uyayazi ihistory nento yokubhalelwa ematsheni. Now uMoses usekhulile. uNkulunkulu uqala umfundisa kucovenant yokuqala maqala kwenziwa izinto ezayifakwe ngaphakathi kumphongolo. uNkulunkulu uyamfundisa ukuthi kubhalwa kanjani. Umfundisa into ayifundile eAfrica. After that ziyaphahlaka lebhebhe zamatshe ayephethe imiyalelo elishumi. Iyaphahlaka ngokuthukuthela kaMoses makefika ehlangana nabantwana bakhe-Israyeli benza izinto uNkulunkulu angeke ayithande. Uyathukuthela uMoses uyayiphahlaza. Ezesibili uNkulunkulu wayesemfundisile uMoses. So uMoses had to write yena. With the information, with isikolo asifunde Africa ukuthi kubhalwa kanjani, because eEgypt vele kwakusetshenziswa amatshe kubhalwe yonke into ematsheni. So the concept yamatshe phakathi kwesivumelwano komphongolo wesivumelwano, that concept, it's an Egyptian concept. The white people came here Africa and then they found Egyptians beyibiza ngokuthi bangama-Kemet. Igama elithi Kemet means bent or African, or bent or black. Igama elithi Kemet. Before izoba religion or anything, but the word Kemet laqala ngaleyo ndlela leyo, it means black or bent. And then abelungu mabefika bona bashifta legama elithi Kemet, bavele basinikeza igama ukuthi we are Egyptians. Because they wanted ukususa esinakho bafake abanakho kithi. I just feel ukuthi ngazathi singaba nama series of such talks and we talk about who we are. You know, it's fine. Let's talk about the Bible. I don't have a problem with that. You know, but I think we should take that direction. I know with baningi abantu asebeqale that direction, but I feel we should engage more on identifying who we are, you know, and who God is in our lives. For another instance, you know, when you do your research about the gods, Egypt, when you do your research, you will learn ukuthi abanye God abase Egypt, they were God of. They were not called gods. They were God of. For instance, God of Osiris, God of Isis, God of Seth. You know, abanye God laba babekhona Africa, but baningi labo God babekhona Africa. But the question is, why did God only destroy 10 if not 9 gods? Laba abanye wayebashiyelana uGod. Ngelinye ngalento sizoyikhuluma and understand abanye God ukuthi eAfrica eEgypt kwakwabo God of ngoba kwenzakaleni. It's the same thing as you saying God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of so and so. I can say God of Ushandu. Omunye can say God of Khumalo. Omunye can say God of so and so, because of what God, how God revealed himself to Ushandu and what I saw God doing through impilo kaShandu, and nami ngamukela uNkulunkulu, ngamukela uJesu through Ushandu. Now I know ukuthi uNkulunkulu ngimbonephi. That is why I will always say God of Shandu, and uNkulunkulu knows that I'm not worshiping Ushandu, but I'm worshiping him because of the things that I saw him doing through impilo kaShandu. So when one starts saying uNkulunkulu kamthiya, people are like, hayi sekayaqala worship a foreign gods. No. Keep quiet kancane and do your research. You know, find out who are these gods. You know, in Egypt, the about God of resurrection. That is God of Osiris. God of resurrection, God of creation, God of Osiris, Lord. You know, ukhona boko baningi bahlukahlukene labo God. Bakhona kade be evil vele. uNkulunkulu had to destroy them. Bakhona abanye who were formed ngekhathi zabo Josepha, bebona uNkulunkulu eshine through impilo kaJoseph, and they were named God of. So when you start hearing umuntu ethi God of, do not think ukuthi umuntu uworshipa lo muntu ambize egcineni lo of. Makuthiwa God of Andile, and automatically you thinking ukuthi people are worshiping Andile. They are worshiping a God that had an encounter with Andile, and they felt ukuthi lo uNkulunkulu unamandla. Sengikhumbula ke kushiwo uNkulunkulu bembiza uNkulunkulu kaIsrael, bathi uNkulunkulu kaIsrael unamandla, uNkulunkulu eqeda ukudestroy uDagona. It doesn't mean ukuthi they were worshiping Israel, but they were saying kaIsrael lo uNkulunkulu okhonzwa uIsrael unamandla. So there's nothing wrong Africa ngokuthi uthi uNkulunkulu wobaba bethu, uNkulunkulu wokhokho bethu. There's nothing wrong with that. You just acknowledging uNkulunkulu ngezinto azenzile ebantwini. But now thina ama-Africans, we always want to say God of Abraham, God of Israel, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. You forgetting ukuthi Isaac, Jacob, Abraham, they lived on earth just like me and you. And if they lived on earth just like me and you, then we cannot worship them, but we can acknowledge ukuthi uNkulunkulu did things through them. But now, self-hate says when you're calling your own father, when you're calling your own grandfather, when are you worshiping foreign gods? That is what we say to each other, you know. And when you're saying God of Abraham, everything is pashasha, everything is fine. You can say God of Abraham, you're not worshiping foreign gods. But when you start saying God of Africans, then there's something wrong with you. I just want Senyavala, I just want us to look at the concept uNkulunkulu ayenayo ekhanda when he worked with the Africa. I mean, look at uNkulunkulu usukela nje uPhilip, uthi Philip hamba yezweni lase-Africa eEthiopia, uzofika uthola indoda laphana umthenwa. Umthenwa uyayifundela. uNkulunkulu cares so much about Africa, and he says go there, and there's a guy there uzofika umthola umfundise. Just immediately uPhilip sekaqedile ukufundisa umthenwa, azange aphinde abonwe uPhilip ever again, because uNkulunkulu wayethuma uPhilip ukuza eAfrica, uNkulunkulu azozitshala eAfrica emntwini ofunda izwi kodwa engal-understand. And then uNkulunkulu ngokuthanda iAfrica wathi Philip go there and teach that guy. Immediately qeda ukufundisa that guy left izwi likaNkulunkulu lagcwala eAfrica. Aliqalanga ukugcwala ngaleso sikhathi, but nje I'm making another example yase-Africa, you know. So uma singayibheka kahle, sizame nje ukwenza more research about us, who are we as Africans, I think kukhona la singafinyelela khona. Maningi amandla esingathi siyawabheka sibonga ukuthi akhona amandla la. Namhlanje ngisho nje kanjalo ukuthi God in Africa, God is amazing in Africa. God is big in Africa. Africa is big. Africa is gifted. Africa is very much gifted. Now I want to talk maybe in another series. I want to talk about uNkulunkulu, obedience kaFaro, because I know all the time when we talk about Pharaoh, we talk about the most evil person, the most disobeying person, the most cruel person and everything. But in our next episode, I just want us to look at uFaro. You know, ngelilanga ngiyafeel ukuthi ngizoke ngishumayele mina ngoFaro phakathi kwabantu begcwele ngikhulume ngoFaro, the person who's very obedient, who was very obedient to God, the person who was very giving to other people, the person who was very welcoming to other people. One day I will talk about uFaro, and ngimveze uFaro, an African king who obeyed God and who was very loyal at some point to abantu bakaNkulunkulu. I will talk about uFaro ngelilanga, but today I was simply saying let's look at God in Africa and God doing great stuff in Africa. May the good Lord bless you. uNkulunkulu womusa anibusise umveli nqanqi owayekhona umhlaba ungakabibikho, uyena owavela kuqala ngqa kwagcina yena ngqi. Ngithi ke ngaye uNkulunkulu ishinga lamashinga, uLast Man Standing, unkandakanda omnyama, uthi siyabonga.